Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Kiran, Senior ENT Consultant from Ma ENT Hospital, Hyderabad. Today we are going to discuss about adenoids and tonsils. These adenoids and tonsil infections are a common problem what we face in our clinical practice. And what we want to know about tonsil and adenoids are how they are important to our body. These tonsils and adenoids, they give us immunity to the body, especially in the childhood. So the adenoids is called as the pharyngeal tonsil and it is located in the back of the nose. It is called as nasopharynx and it is single in number. Whereas the tonsils are located in the throat. They are called the palatine tonsils. They are two in number. And they form a part of the important lymphoid tissue of the body. It is called as the Waldeur's ring of lymphoid tissue, especially the inner ring of the Waldeur's ring. So the other contributory lymphoid tissue for the Waldeur's ring are, in addition to the adenoids, we have got tubal tonsil, and then there are palatine tonsils, which are the tonsils, and also we have got the lingual tonsils. So these tonsils form a protective barrier for the body. So whenever there is any inhalation or ingestion of any antigen or foreign body or dust particles, this Walder ring composed of adenoids and tonsils, they try to protect the nose and the throat from this external infection. So they form the first barrier of the body, and thus when the antigen is presented to this lymphoid tissue, this tissue produces immunity cells called as B cells and antibodies called as IgA antibodies. And these are the first immunity developed in the body, which happens in the childhood. So normally the adenoids and the tonsils are good for health because they improve the immunity of the body, especially in the childhood. But what happens when there is recurrent infection in this lymphoid tissue which protects the body? So whenever there is a recurrent infection, the tissue gets enlarged and hypertrophied. So the adenoids gets enlarged and infected, it is called as adenoiditis. And the tonsils get infected and enlarged, it is called as tonsillitis. So whenever there is a infection to these lymphoid tissue, they enlarge in size and they form a site of bacterial infection. And when they form a focus of infection, the infection from these tissues, they can spread to the other parts. Like from there, they can spread most commonly to the lymph nodes in the neck. And from the neck, the infection can spread to the other parts of the body. And from the adenoids, infection can spread to the ears and to the throat. Tonsil infection can spread to the throat and to the lungs. And also it can spread to other parts of the body. Like if the tonsil infection is not treated in future, it can lead to nephritis or arthritis or carditis in adulthood. So most commonly the infection what we get is a viral infection. It can be a viral adenotonsillitis which subsides generally in 5 days to 7 days. It can subside on its own, or to reduce the severity of the disease, we give medication, antibiotics, analgesics, and other supportive medicines. But when it is a bacterial infection, it is called as bacterial adenotonsillitis. Here the symptoms prolong more than 10 days or 12 days. And in addition to the general infection, there will be fever and there will be high blood count, and the person will be having fatigue, unable to take food. So in this such a situation, we have to diagnose and treat the infection. Now, what are the side effects of this adenotonsillitis infection? What happens if the infection is recurrent? When the infection is recurrent, there will be a biofilm formation in the adenoids and the tonsils. And though the adenoids tonsils may be small in size, they need not hypertrophy every time. So, but the focus of infection will remain and it will cause spread of infection to the ears through the auditory tube or the eustachian tube. So when there is a spread of infection to the ears, there will be infection in the middle ear, fluid accumulation in the middle ear, and that leads to a condition called as otitis media. And if it is recurrent infection, it will lead to otitis media with effusion. and this hampers the function of the hearing. So the child will be having reduced hearing due to the adenoid and tonsil infection. Sometimes the child is able to tell that he is not able to hear, but most of the times the child is unaware and the parents are also unaware that there is a ear problem. So one has to diagnose the ear problem and confirm the adenoids and tonsil by taking some tests. And most common investigation for the adenoids is X-ray of the nasopharynx. Here we come to know the size of the adenoids. Generally, the size of the adenoids, if it is not infected, it will be around 25% of the nasopharynx airway. When it gets infected, it will occupy more than 50% or more than 75% of the nasopharyngeal airway. Then it causes a block to the nose and it results in recurrent cold for the child. So it results in acute rhinosinusitis for the child. And the same infection from the adenoids, it trickles into the throat in the form of a postnasal discharge. And this leads to infection of the tonsils also. So initially, when the adenoid tonsil infection happens, in one way it is beneficial to the body because the body develops immunity to specific antigens and harmful agents. But when the tissues themselves become infected, then we have to decide about the surgery. Generally, the adenoids they subside after 10 to 12 years of age. That is a natural progression of the adenoids. But if the adenoids are so enlarged that it will cause nasal block and the child is not able to breathe properly, especially during the night time, and the child is not able to sleep properly, the sleep is disturbed, it will cause further side effects like concentration problem and effects like irritability, inadequate sleep. So this is called as a sleep disordered breathing. So this has to be diagnosed by the parents and has to be noticed at home. And there is a study called as a polysomnography study, which diagnoses the sleep disorder breathing. So this is one of the indication for surgery of the adenoidectomy and the tonsillectomy. And when the tonsils are enlarged, the child is not able to eat properly. When the child is not able to eat properly, the weight gain does not happen. So it is called as failure to thrive. So when the child is not able to eat properly, the child will be gagging and choking during swallowing. So slowly the food intake reduces and then the child doesn't have the expected weight gain. So this is another indication where we do the adenotonsillectomy surgery. In addition to these problems, we have to also diagnose the hearing problem. We have got certain tests to diagnose the hearing problem like audiometry test, Pearson audiometry, impedance audiometry. So these tests will diagnose how much the ear has got infected, and then we have to decide for the surgery. Whenever there is a ear problem due to adenoids, what we do is we combine the adenoidectomy surgery along with myringotomy and tube insertion. It is called a grommet insertion in the ear. This tube insertion will help to remove any infection and fluid accumulation in the middle ear. And along with that, adenoidectomy is done to prevent further recurrence of the problem of nose block and the ear infection. Now, the problem with tonsillitis, the tonsils are generally covered with crypts, or there are crevices within the surface of the tonsil. So these crypts, they get filled up with infected material and will cause bad smell. So whenever there is an infection of the tonsil, it results in bad smell from the mouth. It is called as a halitosis. And when these crypts get filled up with debris and bacteria and food material, they form stone-like white crystals in the tonsil fossa. These are called as tonsil stones or tonsilloliths. So the tonsil stone formation is also an indication, one of the indication for the tonsillectomy surgery. Now, generally, what are the general doubts is that the adenoids and tonsils are helpful for the body. So if we do a tonsil and adenoid surgery, will it be harmful to the body? So there are specific indication, the number of attacks the child is suffering. If the child is suffering around 7 attacks per year or 5 attacks per year for the past 2 years, or around 3 attacks per year for the past 3 years, it indicates recurrent infection of the adenoids and tonsils. And this is an indication for adenotonsillectomy. So, in this case, more than the benefit because of the immunity, there is more damage to the body by the adenoids and tonsil infection. Only in such a case, we go ahead with the adenoid tonsil operation. In addition, when the hearing problem has happened and there is a sleep disorder breathing or obstructive sleep apnea, we go ahead with the adenotonsillectomy surgery. So when the disease itself causes more problem than the immunity what the tonsils and adenoids give, then we go ahead for the adenotonsillectomy surgery. Now there are different types of surgeries that we do for adenoids and tonsils. So in olden method we used to do a curettage method, and new techniques we got a diathermy method, we have got a radio frequency method and a coblation technology. So the latest technology what we use is called as a endoscopic adenoidectomy using coblation and a microscopic tonsillectomy using coblation. So under the endoscopic and microscopic visualization, the adenoids and the tonsils are visualized and coblation technology is used, and it gives a bloodless feel and less pain for the patient after surgery. And the child can go home the next day after the surgery. The advantage of this technology is that bleeding is very minimal. There is no damage to any surrounding structures. And because the tissues are visualized properly with the endoscope, the adenoid is removed totally. There are no remnants in the adenoids, and the surgery is complete. Similarly, the tonsillectomy done with coblation is done under microscope. And here also we get proper plane of surgery. We can visualize the normal and the surroundings tissues, and we can protect the normal tissues while removing the tonsil surgery. And the advantage of coblation is that it gives a bloodless field. So those debilitated children where the blood count is on the borderline and the body weight is low, the coblation surgery can also be performed safely because there is minimal blood loss. So there is less blood loss and less harm to the body. Now, what are the complications of these adenoids and tonsil surgery? Generally, the complications are in the form of infection because of food infection and any bleeding. The bleeding also is due to infection from the external sources, like the food we take after surgery, and which can be managed with the help of antibiotics. So, after surgery, also, we give antibiotics to protect them from the infection and the complications of the surgery. Now, there are other rare complications, less than 1%, like atlantoaxial subluxation and regurgitation from the nose. This is called as a velopharyngeal insufficiency. So, because the child nose is blocked with adenoids, and after these adenoids are removed, and there is a chance of regurgitation of milk or water coming from the mouth into the nose and outside. So, this is a temporary phenomenon. In about 1 or 2 months, this velopharyngeal insufficiency becomes normalized and the child is able to eat normally. And because there is another problem noticed by the parents is that will there be a change of voice because of the adenoid or tonsil surgery? Generally, when the adenoids or tonsils are occupying the nose and the throat, it will be like a blocked nose or a blocked throat voice. And when the tissues are removed, there is a clear passage opening from the nose to the throat. And there will be some air leakage from the throat to the nose, and this will cause opening up of the voice. So this voice is actually a natural voice for the child. The child, the voice the child had before the surgery, because of the adenoids and tonsil, is a blocked voice or a hyponasal voice. So after the surgery, because the passages are opened up, it results in a natural voice. Now, how the adenoids and tonsils affect the child? Are there any problems if the surgery is not done? So, long term effects of adenoids are mouth breathing. So, when there is a nose block, the child breathes by opening the mouth. And when mouth is open throughout the night, there will be infection of the throat because of inhaled air into the mouth. This results in recurrent sore throat and tonsillitis. And because of mouth breathing, there will be abnormal development of the midface and abnormal development of the palate. So because of the slow growth of the midface, the teeth they become crowded or the teeth become overlapped. So they go to a dental surgeon for the overcrowding of the teeth, and the dental surgeon then advises he suspects adenoids and tonsil problem because of mouth breathing, and then he refers the patient to the ENT surgeon. So the long-term problem of adenoids and tonsils is teeth problem. The another problem, long-term problem which happens is because of infection, especially the staphylococcus infection and the streptococcus infection. So in the long-term infection of the tonsils, the antigens they spread via blood to other parts of the body, like they can spread to the joints and they cause arthritis, especially in adulthood, or they can cause reactive nephritis, kidney problem, kidney infection, or they can cause rheumatoid carditis. So these problems are diagnosed in young adults, and if we take the history, we trace back that the patient had recurrent nose and throat infection in childhood. So these are the problems because the adenoids and tonsils they form the focus of infection. They lead to other secondary problems in the body. Now another problem the adenoids tonsils have is the biofilm formation. So biofilm formation will be having bacterial colonies enclosed in a gelatin material. So whenever there is a chronic infection, biofilms are formed, and these biofilms have bacterial colonies, and because of the gelatin material, they get protected from the antibiotics. So to remove the infection from the adenoids and tonsils, chronic infection, it becomes difficult. The antibiotics they don't work. So long-term antibiotics would be required, like 2 to 3 weeks course of antibiotics. If the infection is severe, you may require injectable antibiotics. And in case of acute follicular tonsillitis or a membranous tonsillitis, the patient will be so septic or the patient will be so sick that he'll be not be able to take food. So such patients we admit in the hospital, give IV antibiotics, injectable antibiotics, give injectable fluids, saline and dextrose, and then slowly over a period of 1 week, they recover from the infection. One of the important infections one has to differentiate in membranous tonsillitis is a diphtheria infection. So whenever there is a membrane formation or follicle formation over the tonsil, the swab from the tonsil has to be taken, the pus is collected and sent for the lab. And here we can make out which bacteria has caused the infection, whether it is diphtheria, which is a serious infection, or whether it is a routine infection like staphylococcus organism or a streptococcus organism. And we also get a culture sensitivity report. So in the sensitivity report, we come to know to what antibiotic these particular bacteria are susceptible. And those antibiotics are given to the patient. Now, when the adenoids and tonsils become severe or become recurrent, there will be blockage of the nose. And this blockage of the nose results in a sinus infection. So it is called as a acute rhinosinusitis. So what happens? The sinuses they get blocked, and there will be low oxygen in the sinuses, hypoxia in the sinuses. The ciliary activity in the sinuses reduces, and there will be mucus stagnation in the sinuses, and bacterial colonization happens in the sinuses, and this leads to a sinusitis. Acute sinusitis we can manage with medication, but if it becomes recurrent sinusitis more than 3 months duration, then it leads to a chronic sinusitis. And in such a case, one has to suspect a patient who is suffering, a child who is suffering from the recurrent sinusitis to have a background adenoids and tonsils. And we investigate the adenoids and tonsils with the help of a nasal endoscopy or a CT scan and confirm the problem. And then we diagnose the hypertrophic adenoids and tonsils and go ahead for the surgery. Now, one of the important factors for the adenoids is allergy. So, if the children are exposed to cold air in winter season because of the viral infection, there will be a sensitivity of the body to catch the infection. So, there is a record of high incidence in winter season for the adenoid and tonsil infection. And if the children are exposed to smoke, like if the parents are smoking at home, the children inhale the smoke and they get susceptible to the adenoids and tonsil infection and the allergy the smoke induces. Similarly, smoke from kitchen, smoke from the agarbatti, or smoke from the mosquito repellents like All Out and Good Night, they can cause allergic reaction in the nose and the throat for the child and lead to an allergy and lead to adenoid hypertrophy and tonsillar hypertrophy. So allergy is an important factor and which can be prevented. So one has to notice in his daily routine to what allergy the person is suffering and try to reduce those allergen exposure. Another problem with the adenoid hypertrophy, there can be a rare instance of a lymphoma formation, which is a tumor. So this can be diagnosed when there is adenoid hypertrophy and a nasal endoscopy is done and oral endoscopy is done on the tonsil. One particular side of the tonsil is enlarged more than the other side. Then, while doing the surgery, we take the tissue from the adenoids and the tonsils and send it to the histopathology, and that reveals the diagnosis. So, though it is a rare condition, one has to keep it in mind that the lymphoma can affect the adenoids and the tonsils. The investigations what we do for the adenoid tonsils surgery, in addition to the routine investigations, blood tests, one has to be careful about the history of bleeding disorder. So any parent, any family history where there is a bleeding disorder, one has to be careful for planning the surgery for the child in such a family. There can be a mild von Willebrand disease which is not manifested, but it is transferred from the parents to the child. So when there is a history of bleeding disorder, one has to go for hematology consultation and do a full coagulation profile and blood count profile and rule out any bleeding disorder. So because there are different types of hemorrhages that can happen after surgery. One is a primary hemorrhage, which is a hemorrhage happening during surgery. So this can be tackled with the help of tie knots in the surgical field or a packing of the surgical field in the adenoids or using a diathermy or a coagulation and control the bleeding. Then there can be another type of bleeding called as a reactionary hemorrhage, which happens around 6 to 12 hours after surgery, after the patient comes out of the operation theater. This happens due to any underlying infection or due to slippage of the knot in the field of surgery. So, in such a case, the patient is taken back to the operation theater and the bleeding points are controlled. There is another type of hemorrhage called as a secondary hemorrhage. This hemorrhage can occur around 2 to 3 weeks after the surgery, and this is mostly due to infection. So, when there is infection in the food and water, it can infect the area of the surgery, the adenoid area and the tonsil area, and cause bleeding from the surgical site. In such a case, the patient has to go back to the hospital and get admitted, get IV antibiotics to control the infection, and if the bleeding is more, he may require a blood transfusion. So, blood transfusion cross matching has to be kept ready when there is a secondary hemorrhage. But generally, these complications are very rare, around only 1 to 2% of the cases of surgery, these complications can happen. When we do a surgery of tonsillectomy, we do in a tonsil position or a Rose's position. So in Rose's position, we apply the mouth gag and under microscopic guidance using copulation, we do the tonsillectomy surgery. And it has to be done under microscope to get a correct plane of the surgery so that the tonsil capsule is dissected away from the tonsil lymphoid tissue and the bed of the tonsil is not disturbed. In such a way, under microscopic guidance, we can differentiate the tonsil tissue from the normal tissue, the anterior pillar of the tonsil, the posterior pillar of the tonsil, and protect the tonsil bed. And for the adenoidectomy, we use a nasal endoscope and a coagulation wand going through the mouth, and a pediatric endoscope is used, a 2.7 millimeters endoscope, and under total visualization, we do adenoidectomy and preserve the tubal tonsils, preserve the without damaging the tubes. We do the adenoidectomy surgery, and we don't damage the surrounding structures. And this also prevents in any remnant formation, remnants in the adenoid area. So in olden days, when you used to do adenoidectomy with curettage, it used to be a blind procedure, and there used to be a recurrence of the adenoid problem. So what are the precautions? What are the generally there is a doubt that the tonsils do they recur after surgery? Generally, the adenoids and tonsils done under experienced hands and with proper technology like a coblation technology, using endoscope for the adenoidectomy and microscope for the tonsillectomy, there won't be a recurrence of the adenoids and the tonsils. And there can be a recurrence of sore throat. So this sore throat or pharyngitis is generally a viral infection. So after surgery, if a person gets exposed to dust or to pollution or if he takes very cool items or is exposed to cold weather in the winter season, he may get a allergic infection, allergic pharyngitis, or he may get a viral pharyngitis. So this is different from a sore throat. This is different from a tonsillitis. And the benefits of adenoids and tonsillitis are generally more in the pediatric age group rather than the adult age group. In the adult age group, the infection is generally a combined infection like a tonsillitis and a pharyngitis. So when the tonsils are removed in a tonsillopharyngitis case, the person, if he is allergic, he may get bouts of pharyngitis. So in adults, when a tonsillectomy surgery is done, we advise the patient to continue taking the precautions for the infection, especially the pollutions, smoke, and exposure to cold air. Now, how many days the patient has to take rest? Generally, the adenotonsillitis children, they stay only one day in the hospital, and the next day they are discharged, and they will be at home for around 1 week. So they have to take care. They have to prevent themselves from any infection from the outside surrounding environment, like from the schools. If they attend the school early, they may get infection from the schoolmates. So generally, we ask them to be at home for around 5 days to 7 days. Now, what are the benefits of the adenotonsillitis surgery? The benefits are that when the child is suffering from the adenoid tonsils, he will get recurrent episodes of fever, recurrent episodes of throat pain, and ear infections. So when the tonsil adenoid surgery is advised and when the surgery is done, the number of attacks of infection they will reduce, the ear infections will reduce, the infection of the sinuses, the rhinosinusitis will reduce, and the risk of infection which can happen in adult age like a nephritis, carditis, or arthritis, they will reduce. So definitely there is a benefit of doing the adenoid tonsillectomy surgery in childhood. Generally, the adenoidectomy surgery is advised above 3 years of age in a child. And if the child is having obstructive sleep apnea, in early age also it can be done. If the child is having obstructive sleep apnea and it is confirmed with diagnostic tests, then even 1 or 2 years of age also the adenoidectomy surgery can be done. So this is the benefit of the adenoid surgery. And the problems with the adenoid tonsil infection are that the child will be having disturbed sleep and there will be loss of school attendance. So when there are bouts of infection, this can result in loss of school attendance. Yearly, the child may be missing the school for 4 to 5 days, around 2 to 3 times in a year. So these school attendance absence can be benefited by doing the adenoid tonsil surgery. The other benefits are that there are recurrent sinusitis attacks will come down. So when there are recurrent episodes of sinusitis, there will be anaerobic infection in the sinuses. And when there is add-on to the allergy, there can be polyp formation in the sinuses. There can be a fungal infection in the sinuses. So all these problems of the sinusitis, they can be avoided when adenoid tonsillectomy surgery is done. Also, there is a risk of formation of antrocolonal polyp, when there is a sinus infection in children. So these problems or the complications can be avoided when the adenotympselectomy is properly advised and it is done in a childhood age. Especially the benefits are more when the surgery is done between 3 years to 7 years of age. So this was the topic of adenoids and tonsils. If there are any queries, you can put your queries into our website. Thank you very much.